Welcome back, and I'm here with Barry Yaremcio, the last beef nutritionist for the government of Alberta, and brought some case studies along with comparing swath grazing with millet. And I know swath grazing has been kind of a flavor of the day lately in terms of beef production and bale processing, as basically, as you just explained, has been something that we've looked at in the past, but now we're into this corn grazing. So you've done some studies here on comparing corn to millet grazing. So I want to let you talk about this case study.
The case study that we're looking at was work done by Clearwater County out of Rocky Mountain House. Mm-hmm. They had a trial. They set up a demonstration, and by luck of the draw, the millet and the corn had the same amount of dry matter yield per acre. So it makes it easy for comparison. Mm-hmm. The one thing that Harlan Hughes told us many years ago, he worked out of North Dakota State as an extension person. Mm-hmm. They said if you can reduce your feeding costs or winter feeding costs by $1, you improve the profitability of your herd by $2.58. So when it's costing you $125, $130 an hour to run that tractor to feed those animals all winter, people want to save that 40 or 50 cents a day in yardage costs by feeding the cows out in the field. So they don't have the cost for machinery. Manure is deposited where it needs to be. They don't have $30 manure hauling costs in the spring. Or the other thing is the efficiency of nitrogen and nutrient use by having the cows deposited out in the field or on the pasture where you need it to be is more efficient than hauling the manure out in the spring by 40%.
Okay, now you brought some slides here and about the Clearwater County trial, so let's have a look at those quickly. And so what we're really looking at here is two types of crop that you're evaluating for swath grazing, and tell us how this works.
Corn is a C4 or warm season crop that needs a lot of heat, a lot of sunshine to do well. Pearl millet is a shorter season crop that's usually ready to harvest in about 60 to 70 days. It needs the warm weather as well, but the fertility requirements for pearl millet are a lot less than corn. Now, corn is a crop that requires a lot of attention to detail. You need to have the right temperature in the soil when you start seeding the crop. You need double the fertility that you do before the cool season crops such as barley and oats that are typically used. And the other thing is the fertility fertilizer and chemical program that you need has to be done on time in order to get the yield. You can lose 30 to 50% of yield if you don't do it at the right time.
So it sounds like intensive management on the agronomic side.
Absolutely. You have to pay attention to detail, and this is no different than what we had with canola 45 years ago. And our recommendations are still the same. If you're going to try it for the first time, do 10, 15 acres. Give it a try. Some areas it works very, very well. Some areas it doesn't. And yields from corn compared to barley over the last 10 years, only 2 out of the 10 years did we really see an advantage by using corn because the weather was perfect for what we needed.
Excellent. Okay, so you've got some economic data after this trial's been done. We're going to have a look at this next slide. So the comparisons here are looking at the cost of production for each of the trials in terms of each of the crops. So I'll let you talk about this slide here.
We tried to look at the basics. I didn't want to get into machinery costs or fuel costs, but if we looked at just fertilizer and seed, the cost for the corn was $190 an acre. You compare that to pearl millet, which was only $95 an acre, your cost per head per day for grazing those animals on that material was 98 cents a day for the corn and 49 cents for the pearl millet. Now this is one example, 1 year, one location. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that this is the way it's going to be all the time, but that's where you have to pull out the pencil and paper and figure out what works and what doesn't work for you in your specific situation.
Great. So when you look at this, you're not saying that this is the case all the time. This was the case in this one particular trial, and it gives you some decision-making information.
That's correct. What do you do that works for you on your farm? You're not farming for your neighbors. You're not listening to what's coming over the media as advertising information. You have to evaluate it for yourself.
Okay, so when you look at this, I mean, one of the things that just pops out right off the bat is the relative seed costs. I mean, they're in this case, it's almost 3 times, almost 4 times as much with the corn than in the millet. I mean, that makes a big difference, as well as the fertilizer requirements. So, in terms of the economic value for millet, how does that stand up with corn?
The value that you're getting from that corn is roughly $100 an acre more value based on the number of animal grazing days that you're getting from the growth. It's all about risk. If you don't have to put the number of dollars out and you have a year that isn't quite production friendly, you're not going to lose as much money at the end of the day.
So when should somebody consider something like this type of decision?
I think that needs to be done not only on the beef side but on the cropping side. Pull out the pencil and paper and figure out what's going to net you the number of dollars per acre.
Fantastic. So that's a good example of some things to consider in terms of production costs for swath grazing. When we come back, we're going to talk about forage testing, forage analysis. You brought a probe, and we can talk a little bit more about what you should be looking at in a forage test and how important that is. And I guess the big topic this year is forage quality.
Absolutely. We're having, with the wild weather that we had and good growing conditions or bad growing conditions, depending on where you are, we've had some wild swings this year.
So making it much more important to understand your quality and reading your test and what you need to do for nutrients.
Absolutely.
Right. So join us shortly and we'll talk about forage testing.